On another exciting entry of Animation Deliberation, good news, everyone! The Hulu Futurama revival is here, and we're going to talk all about it right after this. Sing along if you know the words. 1, 2, 3, it's time for Animation Deliberation! A conversation and a celebration of our favorite action animated series. Yeah! Welcome back to Animation Deliberation, the podcast that takes action, animation, and cartoons seriously, but not too seriously. I am your host, Scotty St. Clair, and I am going solo today because if you've ever watched or ever listened to an episode of this show, you probably have some idea that I am a big fan of Futurama. So knowing that this revival was coming to us from Hulu, I had done a rewatch within the last year, and just really solidified how much I absolutely love this series. So I'm super excited to talk about it. I will give you my impressions on the new episode of the revival that aired today. But before I get into that, I just kind of wanted to talk about Futurama as a whole. So I wanted to kind of go over the storied production history of this show. It really is kind of a little train that could. It just keeps going. It's been canceled, brought back, which it has a very self-awareness to and a healthy humor about that, which is great. But I also want to go over like what I consider my top 5 episodes of the show, and then I will give you my thoughts on this new episode that is out and available now on Hulu. So let's get started. Today we're embarking on a captivating journey into the production history of one of the most beloved animated series of all time, Futurama. Futurama, created by the legendary minds of Matt Groening and David X. Cohen, first graced our screens in March 28, 1999. But the journey of bringing this futuristic, quirky world to life was anything but a smooth ride. In the late 90s, Matt Groening, already renowned for creating The Simpsons, teamed up with David X. Cohen, a former Simpsons writer and producer, to develop a new animated show set in the 31st century. With an initial 13-episode order from Fox, the production began, but the pressure was on. The team had to work hard to establish a unique identity for the show while avoiding comparisons to The Simpsons. Futurama's plot centered around Philip J. Fry, a pizza delivery boy accidentally frozen on New Year's Eve 1999 who awakens 1,000 years later. He finds himself in a bustling, futuristic New York where he befriends a motley crew of characters, including Bender the Robot, Leela the One-Eyed Alien, and many more. The show's clever humor, brilliant writing, and imaginative sci-fi setting quickly garnered a devoted fan base. But despite the show's critical acclaim and growing popularity, Futurama struggled to maintain steady viewership. The show's erratic scheduling and frequent preemptions negatively impacted the show's ratings. Additionally, Futurama faced strong competition from other established programs. Thankfully, the story doesn't end there. Despite facing the chopping block several times, the show's supporters remained vocal, and DVD sales and syndication proved that there was still a dedicated audience hungry for more adventures with Fry and the Planet Express crew. In 2003, after 4 successful seasons, Futurama's original run on Fox came to an end. However, its popularity only continued to grow in the years that followed, fueled by reruns and DVD sales. In 2007, the creators were given an opportunity to produce 4 direct-to-DVD films that would later be split into 16 episodes and aired as a 5th season on Comedy Central. This revival proved that Futurama was far from over, and it continued to attract new fans along the way. Futurama's second run also saw it receive widespread critical acclaim, winning 2 Emmy Awards and experiencing a dedicated following on social media and conventions. While the series finally came to an apparent close in 2013, rumblings of a new 10-episode revival on Hulu began in early 2022. And so, Futurama remains not just a delightful animated series, but a testament to the resilience and the unyielding power of fans. As we conclude our journey through the production history of Futurama, we celebrate its legacy and its ability to transport us to the future while staying eternally relevant in our hearts. All right, so that concludes the production history. Now I'm going to get into what are my top 5 episodes of Futurama. And before I get to the top 5, wanted to mention a couple of honorable mentions. So the first of which is The Sting, which is Season 4, Episode 12. And it's a surreal and emotionally charged episode exploring Fry and Leela's relationship. I'll leave it at that to avoid spoilers, but highly recommend that episode. Fry and Leela's relationship really becomes the crux of the show at a certain point. I think the first 2 or 3 seasons were kind of more, standalone, pretty serialized rather than being episodic. And then as we got into later seasons, there was more character development and more story arcs and character arcs that you saw kind of persist throughout the series. And certainly at the forefront of that was Fry and Leela's relationship. And my other honorable mention is going to be Godfellas, and that's season 4, episode 8. And in this one, Bender becomes a deity to a tiny civilization, leading to amusing consequences. And while the first honorable mention I mentioned, featured heavily on Leela and Fry's relationship, I think this is another great honorable mention because not only does it focus on Bender, who is one of the standout characters in terms of just, being absolutely hilarious, but it also kind of speaks to what Futurama does so well. It's able to toe this line between comedy and absurdism, but also having something very poignant to say in terms of contemplating the large universal forces at work and universal truths and just kind of the microcosm and macrocosm that's the universe that we exist in. So very, very heady episode. I highly recommend that episode as well. But with that out of the way, we're going to get into the top 5 forthright, starting with season 3, episode 1. Coming in at number 5 is Amazon Women in the Mood. And this episode is a delightful romp filled with humorous gender role reversals and fantastic gags. The crew ends up on the planet of the Amazonians, where the roles of males and females are reversed. The interactions between the characters and the Amazonians lead to some of the show's funniest moments, making it a fan favorite. This series has been quoted, turned into memes, I feel like the cultural persistence is just there. And for anybody that's familiar with the series, or maybe you've heard this reference but don't know what it's from, this is the episode where we got Death by Snoo Snoo. So definitely a notable entry here. Okay, and moving on, we got coming in at number 4 is season 7, episode 7, The Late Philip J. Fry. And in this mind-bending and emotionally charged episode, Fry, Bender, and Professor Farnsworth accidentally travel to the end of the universe. The episode's innovative narrative structure and poignant exploration of friendships and the passage of time make it one of the standout episodes of the later seasons. This one kind of does what both of the honorable mentions I mentioned did. Not only does it really move forward with this story of this burgeoning relationship between Leela and Fry, but it also has some absolutely stellar sci-fi concepts and consequences. And again, I'm going to try to avoid giving too much away if you haven't seen it, but I kind of feel like Christopher Nolan's Interstellar, it came out after this. I'm sure he was already actively developing the script when this episode came out, but it really feels like the story of Interstellar kind of took a page right out of this episode's book, just in terms of how time travel exactly works and the cyclical nature of the universe. So really strong in both the character and feelings and emotionals department, but also really delivering on that sci-fi element as well. And it's, of course, hilarious when you've got the pairing of Fry, Bender, and Professor Farnsworth. You know that hilarity is going to ensue, and it does. All right. And our third of our top 5 episodes is going to come to us from season 3, episode 19, Roswell That Ends Well. And again, just, coming off the heels of the last episode talking about time travel, here we go. Time travel is a common theme in Futurama, and this episode exemplifies the show's ability to make history hilarious. The Planet Express crew accidentally gets sent back to 1947, leading to a series of events that eventually involve Fry becoming his own grandfather. The clever writing and time travel paradoxes make this episode one of the most memorable and comedic in the series. And yeah, I mean, that just kind of says it right there. Fry is an idiot, but he's a lovable idiot, and sometimes his faux pas just end up being genius. And it's kind of he very much is you've got that trope of the chosen one, but he actively just kind of trips and accidentally falls into, falls back in his chair into the frozen cryotube there that sends him to the 31st century in the first place. But yeah, just really classic example of how Fry's fate is very much tied to his foibles. All right, and at number 2 in our ranking is Season 3, Episode 4, The Luck of the Fryrish. This episode delves into Fry's past as he discovers his lucky 7-leaf clover, which he believes to be the source of his past successes. The story masterfully balances humor and sentimentality as it reveals the true significance of the clover in Fry's relationship with his brother Yancey. The Luck of the Fryrish showcases the depth of character development that sets Futurama apart. Yeah, and this episode just really kind of stands out as one of the most emotionally resonant and kind of heartfelt. We don't often get to learn too much about Fry's life before being transported or, being cryogenically frozen to where he exists in the future. But getting to see his relationship with his brother and his family and just kind of seeing how, his assumptions and his perspective about whether or not they missed him and if they, took him for granted when he was around, this starts to kind of weave the tale that there was a lot of heartache and loss for them. So, and I think that, this episode dovetails super nicely into what is my number 1 episode of Futurama. And if you're a fan of Futurama, as much of a fan as I am, it's probably going to come to no surprise to you what comes in at number 1, Season 4, Episode 7, Jurassic Park, which is very fitting because I've been on record as saying, on any given day it might change, but the original Jurassic Park definitely vies or competes for the spot of my number 1 movie of all time, but that's a whole nother conversation. But you got to appreciate the allusions there with the title Jurassic Park. And in this poignant and tear-jerking episode, Fry discovers the fossilized remains of his pet dog Seymour from his past life in the 20th century. As Fry learns of Seymour's unwavering loyalty and waits for the opportunity to bring him back to life, viewers are taken on an emotional roller coaster. The ending of this episode is both heartwarming and heart-wrenching, leaving a lasting impact on fans that's hard to forget. Yeah, and, this series typically skews towards the comedy, and this episode is not without its comedy, but it's definitely a tearjerker. Again, trying to avoid some spoilers there, but the last, 5 minutes of this episode get me every single time. I guess I should have a content warning. Even though this is animated, if you're particularly susceptible to, sad pet stories, particularly dog stories, go into this one with a box of tissues and maybe, don't watch it alone if you can avoid it. But that being said, it fires on all cylinders. It does everything that I've talked about so far. It delivers on the emotion. It delivers on the sci-fi. And just like I was talking about the last episode, it really provides this avenue to do a character study of Fry and just what kind of impact he's had, not only in the future that he exists in now, but the impact that his absence in our present day, his 1999, what that really looked like. So there you have it. That's my top 5 episodes. So again, running down from the top, at number 1, I've got Jurassic Park. Number 2, The Luck of the Fryrish. Number 3, Roswell That Ends Well. 4, The Late Philip J. Fry. Number 5, Amazon Woman in the Mood. And those honorable mentions were The Sting and Godfellas. And okay, I think I've talked at length enough about the history of the show and some of my favorite episodes. Let's talk about the reactions to this new episode. And this new episode, officially titled Season 11, Episode 1, The Impossible Stream. All I got to say is this show picked up like it's done on more than one occasion, like it never left off. It just picks right up. So I will say, the show generally does a pretty good job of when there is a reboot, you can just kind of hop in and start fresh. And I think you can do this with this episode, but you would be best served by going back and really watching the last episode that came out in 2013, Season 10, Episode 13, titled Meanwhile. This episode basically picks up right where that episode left off. And, I've said a lot about this show just kind of firing on all cylinders, but already right out of the gate, I'm really stoked for this revival. I was already super excited for it, but having the first episode and having it work so well really excites me. It's it's what's so great about the show. It is timely. It's meta, it's self-aware, and just the fact that like even in 2013, like binging and streaming were relatively new concepts. I mean, they had started to, become a part of the like lexicon and the zeitgeist, but in the 10 years that have passed since then, like streaming has taken over, and Futurama took the opportunity to tap right into that with this episode, all about streaming, what kind of implications that has on the consumer of the content as well as the creators of the content. Like the fact that they had such a crazy like writer's room joke while the writer's strike is like ongoing just like speaks to the like, it's a little on the nose here, but the forward thinking, like being able to kind of predict the future. And and needless to say, the fact that like they're poking fun at a streaming service like Futurama was never shy about giving Fox crap for their treatment of the show, and they're canceling and bringing it back. And the fact that it's on Hulu right now, they just play right into that with a streaming service called Fulu. Like, and kudos to Hulu for just taking that one on the chin and just rolling with it. But Futurama is one of those shows I don't know. There might be like individual episodes that would be worth like sitting down and having an in-depth conversation. But I don't know if I have too much more to say on this one. I'm sure there are jokes that will come back to mind now, but I'm really coming pretty fresh off of watching it and just kind of like, running down the future of the show and researching my top 5 episodes. But one thing I would really like to do is once this, entire new season has aired, I would love to do a review of that. Another thing I've been kind of contemplating as a potential episode is maybe doing like a top 10 episodes of Futurama where I can bring on like another guest and we can kind of make a game of it, like each have our top 10 episodes and kind of go back and forth and create a definitive top 10 between the two of us. I have some like pretty cool ideas about that. So if that's something you would like to listen to, please let me know. And I appreciate you listening to this one. We have a lot going on here at Animation Deliberation, so if you want to send some feedback about Futurama or anything else, you can do that at animationdeliberationpodcast@gmail.com. Also, check out the Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2 coverage that's been ongoing. Every now and then we'll do like a news episode, so I know we had quite a few episodes coming out around San Diego Comic-Con. And actually, shortly here, Zuhair and I are going to be talking about Invincible Season 2, and Prime just dropped this Adam Eve special episode, so we're getting ready to talk about that. But in addition to that, we've got my Adventures with Superman. That show's been really great and very strong right out of the gate. So yeah, always something to talk about here. Check out all our social medias, and you can also check me out on Multiverse News, and just check out the Stranded Panda Podcast Network. A lot of great things going on there. So again, thank you for tuning in, TOONIN, and on behalf of my co-host, stay well.
Thank you for listening to the Animation Deliberation Podcast, a proud member of the Stranded Panda Network. If you would like to contact us, you can email animationdeliberationpodcast@gmail.com or follow us on Twitter @animationdelib1. For this and other great shows, you can visit strandedpanda.com or join the great community that is the Stranded Panda Chat Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/svchat. Tune in next time, and remember, stay whelmed.